Hey everybody and welcome to our channel, Sandbox Bullies. I've been meaning on starting a new series of videos that keeps those critics honest on new releases, whether they be on Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, or in the theaters. I wanted to start it with Dave Chappelle's Sticks and Stones, as that one was turning a lot of heads, and then Bill Burr's Paper Tiger, which came soon after that. But both times they just kind of fell through, and I was too busy to make those videos. But I got some time on my hands, and I want to approach a new release that has been a little bit divisive, Frozen 2. So how this is going to work is I'm going to give you a brief synopsis of the movie, and then we're going to look at some major quotes from critics and see whether I agree or disagree with them. And at the end, I'll give you my overall rating of the movie. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet so that you guys can get an idea of what you're going into if you want to see Frozen 2. And if you're kind of on the fence about it, hopefully this video will help you make up your mind. Set 3 years after the events of the first film, the story follows Elsa, Anna, Kristoff, Olaf, and Sven, who embark on a journey beyond their kingdom of Arendelle in order to discover the origin of Elsa's magical powers and save their kingdom after a mysterious voice calls out to Elsa. And now let's dive into those reviews. So I have some notes in front of me and a good variety of articles from major critics that saw Frozen 2 and rated it on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't know how Rotten Tomatoes works, it's basically just an aggregate percentage of which critics liked the movie, or at least liked it enough, thought it was okay enough to give it a thumbs up. Otherwise, if it gave it a thumbs down or a rotten score, it'll hurt the movie. So looking at Frozen 2, it got an aggregate score of 75% from a total of 201 critics, and from user input, we have 3,820 verified ratings from the audience, giving it 94%. So on average, the general audience was coming out of the movie liking it more than the critics were. A lot of critics caught my eye, but one review that I saw immediately said the whole thing left me cold, partly because there's no actual villain and thus very little concrete drama. With that, I'm gonna have to disagree. I don't think every movie's drama has to revolve around a conflict with a villain. Inner conflicts between family and friends can easily drive a story and be just as passionate. For the first Frozen movie, Han was a great villain because he didn't really see it coming. He didn't really put things into play, he just kind of seized his moment. It's not like he was the master puppeteer behind this grand evil plan for the whole movie. That's not what was going on. In fact, there was a red herring with the Lord from Weaselton. So I want to let you know I did not have a chance to read this critic's full review because I did not have a subscription to their website. But based on those words alone, I'm going to have to disagree with them. And next I have Brian Lowry from CNN.com, who said, because the first movie generated such a bracing gust of enthusiasm, Frozen 2 will inevitably be nitpicked and judged against those lofty standards. Still, there's plenty to enjoy for those willing to chill out and, yes, let the past go. That's right, let it go. So here's some highlights I found from his full review. There's also some funny stuff for Josh Gad as the snowman Olaf, who in one applause-inducing sequence breathlessly recaps the previous movie in one rat-a-tat burst. And of course, there's the ongoing romance between Anna, played by Kristen Bell, and Kristoff, played by Jonathan Groff, the latter of whom actually gets to sing a whole song this time out in a cleverly amusing boy band spoof. Like the best Disney animation, Frozen 2 effectively operates on multiple levels, and like any follow-up to a major hit, it comes burdened with expectations that are challenging to fulfill. I agree 100% with Brian Lowry. The first one set up major expectations, and for good reasons. I mean, it was an instant classic, and they had 6 years to come up with a new story to tell with these beloved characters. It is stunningly beautiful animation, and Olaf was hysterical and hands down the MVP of this movie for me. The scene with Olaf he's talking about is indeed hysterical. It was my favorite part of the movie, I think, and it's the one that I remember the most after the fact. The next article I looked at was written by Katie Walsh from the Tribune News Service, and she wrote, "It's what you expect from the characters and the world. It gets the job done. But the most enthusiasm one can muster for Frozen 2 is it's perfectly adequate, unlikely to create a seismic cultural shift like its predecessor." Her article made a lot of sense, and she made some really good points. Here are basically the highlights of what she said, and I'll link all these articles down in the description if you want to read them. Disney's 2013 animated Frozen wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural tidal wave, a ubiquitous phenomenon thanks to Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez's soaring songs, particularly the inescapable, Oscar-winning Let It Go, belted by Broadway powerhouse Idina Menzel. 6 years later, the Elsa Halloween costumes have yet to grow cold, so when it comes to a sequel, the only mandate is, don't muck it up. The good news is they haven't. The bad news? That's about it. Frozen 2 doesn't represent some giant leap forward for the Frozen universe. It merely keeps the franchise on track. For many, that'll be fine. More adventures of Elsa, Anna, Olaf, and Kristoff. But the movie has all the staying power of a snowflake. It evaporates almost on contact. For the most part, I'm gonna have to say I agree. I wouldn't put it in as harsh of terms or have it be as blunt as Katie Walsh, but again, I really can't disagree. And again, this comes from how perfectly I think Brian Lowry put it. The first one created a cultural shift. Kids blasting the soundtrack in the car nonstop, memes galore, kids dressing up as Elsa and Anna for Halloween 6 years in a row. I mean, it's hard to compete with such an instant classic like the first Frozen. The next review I looked at was written by Matthew Lacona from San Diego Reader, and his review is pretty short, but I'll read the highlights of it. Olaf the Snowman is considerably funnier and more useful to the story this time around. His ridiculous recounting of the first film's events to some folks who need catching up is a meta delight. Other positives, Elsa's ice powers make for some spectacular visuals, and animators have outdone themselves when it comes to depicting water. But it's not much gain against a good deal of loss. The tension between Elsa and her sister Anna this time around is unconvincing, as it has less to do with don't shut me out and more to do with where I am going you cannot follow. The story, which concerns a disturbance in the elemental spirits and a mystery in a misty wood, is both dragged out overall and rushed through in crucial moments to the point of neglect. And the songs range from underwhelming to cringingly silly. Again, I somewhat agree. He makes really good points. I agree with the critics' arguments and his logic and the overall consensus of the issues in this film. But the issues that he brings up don't strike me as deserving a 1 out of 5 score, which he gave. I mean, a 20% doesn't seem fair to Frozen 2. So I agree with him on his logic. I disagree with him on his score, but that's okay. It's preference. This fifth and final review was so good, I'm going to give it this episode's Insightful Critic Award. Miss Nell Minogue made me look at Frozen 2 a little bit differently. Frozen 2 has an autumnal palette with russet and gold setting the stage for an unexpectedly allegiant tone in the follow-up to one of Disney's most beloved animated features. Even the irrepressibly cheerful snowman Olaf, now permafrosted so even the warmest hugs don't melt him, is worried about change as the leaves turn orange and float down from tree branches. He's confident, though, that as soon as he gets older, he will understand everything. After all, that's what he expects from Elsa, Anna, and Kristoff. Anna reassures him, in song of course, that yes, some things change, but some things are forever. She tells him that even when you don't know the answers, you can always just do the next right thing, and that will help. Parents often ask me why children, especially preschoolers and middle schoolers, like to watch the same movies over and over. I tell them that when everything around you seems to be drastically changing on a daily basis and you barely know yourself anymore, it can be a great comfort to have a movie friend that's the same every time. Frozen 2 is destined to be one of those movies children will want to see dozens of times. It will reward repeat viewings with both its reassuring messages about responding to change with courage and curiosity, and its challenge to understand the mistakes of the past so we can begin to work on the next right thing together. Nell Minogue made me reevaluate this movie and see it in a new light. Frozen 2 will definitely be getting some positive reviews as it deserves. While I side with those who say it's impossible to live up to the first film as it was an instant classic, Miss Nell Minogue dwindles it down to this. The movie is targeted towards kids, and while us animation-loving adults can have our gripes with any solid animated flick, kids see these movies differently from us, and Frozen 2 will no doubt be one that kids will want to rewatch thanks to its relatable message about change. Guys, I loved Frozen 2, and while I think it struggled to live up to the expectations that its perfect predecessor established, I loved the darker themes and the mysteries at play. The continued tension and following growth between Elsa and Anna strengthened the overall less refined story, and while Olaf's character was utilized more, Kristoff's importance suffered this time around, despite him getting his own cringy 90s music video halfway through the movie. Overall, I'd give this one a B and a 7.5 out of 10 on the entertainment scale. Let me know what you think of the movie if you've already seen it, and do you want them to go for that trilogy, or do you think they should stop with this one? That's a wrap on the first episode of Critique on the Critics. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.